Okay, hello back 365 students. So let's talk about the cellular respiration. Let me see if I can get these slides going. Okay, so now, yeah, before we continue, I just want to let you know that I set up test 2. So remember, test 1 we did was in class test, so that was worth 20%. Um, we then have test 2, which is an essay type. So you're going to have 10 questions where you have to write down short answers, explanations, and things like that. So the time limit is 1 hour. Don't worry about spelling. Just make sure you gave me the correct logical answer to the question. I also provided lots of images to help you in your explanation. This will start on April, so that's Sunday. Now, I'm sorry about that. I know many of you might have some religious obligation, but like the quiz will be open all day on Sunday, starting from early morning up until like 12 o'clock in the night. So if you have religious obligations, you can always do it in the afternoon part. There are 10 questions and each is worth 2 points. So that's going to give me, flexibility to assign you points depending on your answer. So if you give me the full description or the full answer, and I say, okay, this is what I was looking for, then I will give you 2 points. Otherwise, you can either receive 0.5, 0.5 points, 1.5, and the maximum of 2 points. Okay, so one thing that we were talking a lot is that many of the reactions are coupled. So one of the greatest examples that we were discussing was the coupled reactions between the photosynthetic electron transport chain and the Calin cycle. Now here there are a lot of products and a lot of cycles when we talk about respiration, but you really need to know just the basic facts. So we are not going to go into great detail. You are going to go into great detail once you go into biochemistry. So then you would have to know the name of all the enzymes. But here, what I'm really looking for is where it is happening, what is the point of this cycle, and what is the first and the last product. So why do we respire, and why do cells in general respire, including plants? We respire not so much because we need energy. Now, especially this goes for the plant because they can't produce their own glucose. But during respiration is where we are going to have all those carbon skeletons. So anything that is made out of carbon during the respiration, this is where these products are going to be made. Now, this is a small but very important table, which is kind of giving you the rate between photosynthesis and the respiration. So, of course, in the dark, there is no photosynthesis. There is also, no Kelvin cycle. So the respiration rate, here in the complete dark would be 0. So then what is going to happen with the respiration is the respiration will go up. So because of that, plants will take in the oxygen and they will give out carbon. Now, during dim light, the photosynthesis can still happen. It's not going to be the highest rate like it is when there is enough sun. So in the dim light, you can really see the rates of the photosynthesis and the respiration will be kind of equal. And also, it's like the same amount of gas that is taken in will be come out. So, they kind of cancel each other out. So during dim light, there is some photosynthesis happening and some respiration happening. So they are going to be equal. And then, of course, you have the third case scenario where you have the bright sunlight. So it's, daylight. And of course, the photosynthesis rate is going to spike up, which is then going to be way greater than the respiration rate. So then carbon dioxide is taken in and oxygen is given out. Now, overall, plants do give us oxygen, and they, um, well, we talk about who gives us most oxygen, the phytoplankton, and they do that because simply photosynthesis happens longer and on a higher rate compared to the respiration. So we are going to talk about those basic steps in respiration. So this is the process of glycolysis. This is the process of the Krebs cycle. And you can see all those products which go into building those carbon skeletons. So see right here in the process of the Krebs cycle, many of those products will go into building up chlorophyll and the antenna chlorophyll. Some of those, especially in the pentose phosphate pathway, will be used to build, nucleic acids and ATP, or to build some other proteins and other amino acids. And so you see how, glycolysis and Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. So all of these, it's building blocks for those skeletons. Oh, right there we have the production of phospholipids for the membrane and the cellulose. Now, this is a simplified image of what happens during a respiration in plants. Of course, in animals, you don't have these, so you wouldn't have a plastid. So you can note that there's there will be some minor differences, because in animals, once you eat your chocolate, you sucrose, you enter your needed amounts of glucose, then it goes kind of straight down to the mitochondria. Now, however, some of the 6 and 3 carbon sugars can enter glycolysis in different points. So this is the major difference. So in animal cells, you will not have this inputs like in the middle of the cycle, but it's going to go straight down onto the mitochondria. But because in plastid, you can see that starch can be broken down into those hexose and triose sugars, they can then pass from the plastid onto the middle of the cycle of glycolysis. Just one thing to kind of remind ourselves, not all the glucose that is being utilized is going to go into respiration. So some of that glucose will be used into pentose phosphate pathway, which I already mentioned. And this is where glucose is going to be converted into two-step process into ribulose 5-phosphate, which is the basis for building of the DNA. So what did I try to say? So during the day, substrate for respiration is non-photosynthetic cells in sucrose in photo. I'm not sure what I wanted to say here, so I'm just going to skip that. Okay, so Calin cycle is not happening during the night. So why is Calin cycle not happening during the night? Can anyone tell me? Well, if you look at this picture, the answer is pretty simple. It's the Calin cycle cannot happen without the quote light reactions, because there is no input for the ATP and NADPH. So if you don't have these, you don't have these, you don't have Calin cycle. So this is just, some of the answers to those logical questions. It's really, really simple. So all you have to do is kind of think about. And now, since we all come from a universal common ancestor, and our universal common ancestor had all these cycles, so of course all organisms today, of course, except anaerobic bacteria, they don't have a process of a respiration, of course, but all other organisms have the process of respiration. The only minor difference is that there are some differences between the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Their electron transport chain is happening on the plasma membrane, while in eukaryotes who have mitochondria, that's where the Krebs cycle is happening. But both bacteria and, both prokaryotes and eukaryotes can respire. These are the three main processes which we are going to talk about. So number one is glycolysis. Number two is the Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. And then, of course, you have the respiratory electron transport chain. Okay, so you see here, okay, now this is really, really important. I should put this in red in bold. That is, plants have two electron transport chains. Okay, we talk about the photosynthetic electron transport chain, and then this is the second one that they have, which is a respiratory electron transport chain. The photosynthetic electron transport chain happens on the thylakoid membrane, okay, on the granium in chloroplast, while the respiratory electron transport chain happens in the mitochondria. And I cannot stress out how important this is.